Wolf, get away from those sheep.
Bollocks.
You're listening to the Wolf and the Shepherd podcast, broadcasting from Fort Worth in the great state of Texas. Now, get ready for this episode of the Wolf and the Shepherd.
Welcome to this episode of the Wolf and the Shepherd. Today we're going to be talking about the worst movies ever made. You just push this across the desk. I really don't want to talk about The Last Jedi.
Well, actually, this podcast is only going to cover the 80s. Okay, so we're safe until we do a follow-up episode, in which case we can basically dedicate an entire show to The Last Jedi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this is just movies made in the 80s. Gotcha.
And only 5 of them at that. Apparently, other than being one of the best decades ever for movies being released in terms of popularity.
Oh, no, let's be honest. There were a lot of good movies in the 80s.
But apparently it's also one of the worst decades ever known for bad movies.
No, I can imagine that. I mean, I kind of vaguely remember some bad movies from the 80s. I haven't even seen the list yet, but yeah, there were some bad movies in the 80s, but yeah, there were some really good movies in the 80s. So this list might be pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, if we get enough emails requesting that we cover other decades, we will actually go ahead and dedicate an episode to each decade's crap at a later point in the year.
Yeah, but are we going to go forward or backwards? Because
I don't think it matters.
Well, yeah, but if you talk about the 70s, then I'm not going to be too sure. But if we go forward, like into the 90s, maybe I can talk about those. But if we go much backwards from the 80s, I'm probably not going to know the movies.
Well, I think the big problem you have when you look at really bad movies is the 80s and maybe the 90s were the last decades where you had to have a lot of money to make a movie.
Right.
Whereas, you know, once you got to the 2000s, cheap video cameras, and then obviously being able to record on phones, there were more movies, independent movies produced. So declaring something the worst is more difficult when you've got probably tens of thousands of contenders.
Well, that's true.
So maybe we should just do the 90s and the 70s and then leave it at that.
Yeah, you might have to do the 70s by yourself, though.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember. Well, outside of Star Wars, I don't really remember too many movies from the 70s.
Oh, The Godfather. Godfather 1, Godfather 2, those were from the 70s.
Yeah, but I didn't watch them. I wasn't old enough.
Well, neither was I. But they're from the 70s.
They are from the 70s, but also not likely to make the list of worst movies ever made in the 70s.
Well, no, obviously they're not. But if you were going to ask me, okay, name 3 movies from the 70s, I would say, okay, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, and I guess I just lost.
You're lying to yourself and baby Jesus. You would say
Star Wars
3 times.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so if you asked me for 4, then I'd be screwed.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to the first movie, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, worst movies in the 80s. So this movie is from the 80s.
From the 80s. I had heard of the title of this movie, but I've never seen it, and I honestly had no clue what it was about. But it's been widely renowned as possibly one of the worst movies of all time. Now, I know they throw that around a lot, like, oh, the best drama ever made and all this stuff, but this one, even decades later, people still put on their list as one of the worst movies ever made.
Well, yeah, but did you see the deal about Citizen Kane? How they dug up some old bad review on that movie from way long ago, and now it lost its Rotten Tomatoes perfect score because some movie critic years ago didn't like it, and now it lost its perfect score.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we're going to see more of that. So maybe we can dig up some really good reviews on some of these movies you say are the worst of all time and swing this around.
Well, a lot of the blame lies at the foot of the director, Michael Cimino, for this disaster.
Okay.
Right? Because he started getting this obsession with being over perfect during the movie, and there were some scenes he demanded 50 plus retakes, even though nobody could work out what was wrong with the scene. It wasn't like dropping lines or standing in the wrong spot. He just had this idea of perfection, And so some scenes were like 50 plus retakes, and it also like refused to start shooting until a cloudy light rolled across the sky.
Well, that's confusing.
Yeah.
On its face.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that director.
Well,
but I've not heard of every director.
He was the dude who did The Deer Hunter. He won 5 Oscars. Oh. That was his previous movie, The Deer Hunter, that won 5 Oscars, and then he comes out with this.
Oh, and this movie is what?
What do you mean? What?
Well, you haven't even said the name of the movie yet.
It's called Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, I think
I thought I'd mentioned it.
No, I don't think you did. I think the listeners probably need to know what movie we're talking about.
Well, maybe we had a stump the audience moment there for a while.
Okay. I think we stumped them all because we didn't say the movie. So the movie's name is Heaven's Gate.
Well, the first line I actually read on this movie was from a film critic, and he said to even mention this movie's name in critique circles is blasphemy. So I think that stuck in my head, which is why I didn't say the name of the movie.
Oh, maybe we weren't supposed to say the name of the movie.
It's bad luck now.
But Heaven's Gate was the name of that cult. Yeah, where all the people committed suicide and they were wearing Nikes. I mean, that's why we wear Adidas, because we don't want to belong to a cult.
Well, all the best cults kind of commit suicide.
Well, yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, this movie was loosely based on the Johnson County War in Wyoming back in the 1890s, which, I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of.
No, I haven't either. I mean, Johnson County in Texas is just south of us.
But,
but if you'd have said the Johnson County War, we'd have said, the people in Burleson are upset with taxes and they're shooting their guns at drones or something like that. That's what I would know about the Johnson County War.
Now, the movie actually cost about $45 million to make, and it only brought in $3.5 million, and it ended up bankrupting United Artists in the process.
Well, let's also remember, you're talking about $45 million in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's not $45 million in today's
41
money.
Years ago.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
What exactly was the premise of this movie? I mean, do we know? Because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've never seen this movie. No, I've never even heard of this movie.
Well, there's a reason I haven't put in actually more about the plot of this movie, because the moment I get home, I'm going to download it via BitTorrent and force my girlfriend to watch it tonight.
I wonder if movies this bad, if you try to pirate them, that you get some kind of credit to say, hey, you at least tried to share this movie that nobody wants to watch, so we're going to give you a pass on
I'll be seeding it for about 2 weeks and get like no downloads. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues around this movie was that it's almost 4 hours long.
4 hours
almost
long.
4 hours long.
Well, now, hang on. So you have Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
If you ask me what's one of the longest movies, I always think of Gone with the Wind, and that's like 3 hours and something. So this movie's longer.
Any of the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit ones, were pretty much 3 hours as well, weren't they?
Yeah, it's like 2.5 hours of walking and 30 minutes of actual movie. But Gone with the Wind's really long. So you're saying this movie's longer than Gone with the Wind?
Now, it got yanked from release after a week because there's so many complaints about how long the movie was.
Wow.
And then they re-released it as a 149-minute version. So they managed to cut out 90 minutes of fluff from the original movie. So that just shows you how padded out with crap, which was either boring or just not relevant to the plot whatsoever.
Yeah, but, okay. So
they cut out a whole movie's worth out of the movie.
Right, but on the opposite side, with the Lord of the Rings, like you bring up, there's like these director's cuts of those movies, which make them even longer.
Right.
I mean, I remember seeing whatever the last Lord of the Rings movie was with my wife and thinking, oh, the movie's over. And I'm sitting there gathering stuff up and I look up and the movie keeps going and it goes on for another hour. I'm like, I need to get up and go to the bathroom. Like, what's going on with this movie? You're telling me they cut 90 minutes out of this movie and it's still bad.
Yeah.
After a week.
Right.
Is there a director's cut of this movie that's like 6 hours long?
I don't know. There's various director's cuts, or not necessarily the director who did it, but people have released it as a director's cut of this movie. Apparently you can watch them on YouTube. And I guess because the film studio went bankrupt when they released it. There was no copyright issue on the movie, and so the original copies can be found on YouTube now, the entire movie, with no infringement warning on it whatsoever.
Ironically, they're probably not monetized.
Yeah, they've probably got about 9 downloads or something.
Yeah.
Well, even after they cut the 90 minutes out, the reviews for the monthly magazines were also always coming out, a little bit later than the kind of daily or weekly newspapers.
Sure.
So even after the movie got the chunks cut out, it got such stunning reviews as an unqualified disaster. And I mean this taking World War II into consideration. The most scandalous cinematic waste I've ever seen. Again, obviously, they haven't seen The Last Jedi at that point, but
sure.
Time magazine called it one of the 100 worst ideas of the 20th century. It finished only one place behind Neville Chamberlain, the English Prime Minister at the time, trying to make peace with Hitler.
Well, and that's a bold statement from Time magazine because they named Adolf Hitler Man of the Year.
Right, yeah. And the Guardian newspaper in England called it the worst film of all time. And 2 years ago, when they rewrote a similar article, it's still listed as the worst film of all time.
Now, I guess the big question is, was it nominated for any Academy Awards?
No, just bad stuff like raspberries and all that stuff. Now, we'll leave the movie on this note.
Gotcha.
There were widespread accusations of animal cruelty.
Oh, there were animals in the movie?
Yeah, and apparently well-founded, because in one scene, they actually literally blew up a horse with explosives on set.
Was it a live horse or a
real
dead horse?
Yeah, a real horse.
Well, no, but was the horse...
it was standing still.
But the horse was alive.
Yeah, before
when
it
they
got
blew
blown
it up.
Yeah, it's not like a Warner Brothers cartoon. It's not still live after being blown up.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, they actually killed. That was among a number of animal cruelty things. But yeah, they actually blew up a live horse.
So they didn't get that deal at the end of the movie where it said, the Humane Society has monitored this and no animals were harmed in the making of this film.
We just got to hope this wasn't one of the scenes he demanded 50 retakes of.
Oh, yeah, that would be terrible.
Yeah.
Do you know in the Shawshank Redemption, the scene where Brooks has the crow and so Andy Dufresne has the worm that's in his food and Brooks says, "Hey, can I have that?" And they fed that to the crow. Do you realize they had to have that worm dead to feed to the crow so the Humane Society could give them a blessing of no animals were harmed in the film?
Wow.
Little trivia there.
Now,
since we're talking about movies.
Now, following on from that, I now introduce a movie where apparently many of the animals were harmed, albeit only emotionally and psychologically.
Okay.
Yeah. So I bring to you Tarzan the Ape Man from 1981. Have you ever seen that movie?
There was a Tarzan movie in the early 80s?
Yeah, Tarzan, the Ape Man, not just Tarzan.
I don't remember this at all.
No, I don't think I saw it. I think it was actually, I do remember it just purely because Bo Derek was in it.
Bo Derek was in Tommy Boy.
And the first movie where she became famous was in that movie 10, where she was like walking along the beach in a bikini.
Well, yeah, that's the famous poster that everybody has of her.
And so, obviously I was too young to really appreciate that at the time, but I did know who she was by the time this movie came out. But that is the only reason I've heard of this movie, because I know she was in this movie.
Right. And so, like I said, in Tommy Boy, there's actually that scene where she's getting out of the pool and Chris Farley says, Dad,
was that when she flings her hair back?
Yeah, and he says, Dad, she's a 10. And it was a throwback to the fact that she was in that movie Perfect 10 or whatever. Right. So, yeah, I know who she is.
Right.
It's kind of ironic, though, that she has two men's names and she's a woman.
Right. Her name's spelled B-O, though, not B-E-A-U. Mind you, Bo,
No, B-E-A-U is the French version. I mean, Bo is still a man's name.
True.
Derek, it's like, two men's names, and she's a woman.
We obviously don't need to provide any backdrop, because this is just basically another remake of Tarzan, but it's from Jane's point of view, mostly.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's like an adult...
Who played Jane? Bo Derek?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically like an adult version of the Jungle Book, but with a little bit less anthropomorphism.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So as we said, its most redeeming feature is that it has Bo Derek as Jane, and it was pretty much stated as fact that without people hoping to catch a glimpse of her boobs, it would have been hard to force the actor's own relatives at knife point to sit down and watch the movie. That was the first review of that movie.
Wow. Was that Siskel or Ebert?
I don't know. I don't get that reference.
You don't know who Siskel and Ebert are?
No.
Ah, see, this is your British upbringing. Siskel and Ebert were the quintessential movie reviewers in the United States for years. And then one of those dudes died. I don't remember if it was Siskel or Ebert or whatever. One of those dudes died. I think they're both dead now. But yeah, that's where the whole 2 thumbs up came from. Was Siskel would say thumbs up, Ebert would say thumbs up, and that's where movies got reviewed. It was 2 thumbs up from them. And it could be 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down, or 2 thumbs down. But yeah, they were big movie reviewers.
It's not exactly the most stringent kind of guide to movies to go on, though, is it? If you've only got 3 variations, it's just like crap, average, excellent.
Well, it's basically it's basically like the Oscars are too. I mean, that's why if you look at the way the Oscars were this year, which the Oscars just came out like last week, and it was the lowest viewed Oscars of all time for several years based off population or whatever. And just nobody's caring about what the critics and the Academy cares about movies anymore.
Yeah, well, I haven't watched the Oscars other than a few perhaps highlights a long time ago, and I think that's just because I wanted certain movies to win something. But nowadays I would honestly rather watch 100 naked men named Oscar defecate in an open field than sit and watch the Oscars.
I think it would probably get more viewers,
and I'd rather be downwind of them as well, rather than
and that would get more viewers than the Academy Awards did this year.
Yeah, and ironically, there'd be less crap involved.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky Gervais kind of set that up last year.
Yeah.
I mean, good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, his little speech, he kind of set that up.
Yeah.
So you got to hand it to him for that.
Now, as I was talking about before, that, most people went to see the movie in the first couple of weeks on the promise, or rather likelihood, that Bo Derek might get her boobs out at some point during the movie.
Sure. I can see that.
Yeah. But once word actually got out in the newspapers and magazines that she did indeed not get her boobs out, the box office receipts dried up in about a week.
Okay, so basically people went and saw the movie and then said she did not take her boobs out.
Yeah.
And then nobody wanted to go see the movie.
Yeah. It's like the equivalent of you taking, I don't know, like your 12-year-old to the movies and saying, son, we're going to go and see the new Tarzan movie. And be like, Dad, I don't want to. Shut up. You're coming to watch the new Tarzan movie.
Right.
And you're just waiting like the whole movie. You come out and your son's like, Dad, that was really good. And you're like, no, it sucked. It's a disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. But you also have to remember back in those days that there was no, early release. There was no trying to get it on the pirate network. There was no, getting the screeners or whatever where you could see it. You had to wait till these critics actually went out and saw the movie and then told you some of what was in the movie. So when they turned around and said, this didn't happen, and everybody was sitting there expecting that to happen, then they're going to say, well, why would I go bother seeing this?
Now, one of the kindest movies about this movie said the acting was...
One of the kindest movies about this movie.
No, one of the... Is that what it is?
That's exactly what you said. Oh, we're not editing this out.
Yeah.
Now, you got to buckle up, Buttercup.
So one of the kindest comments about this movie...
There we go.
Said the acting was so bad, the animals in the movie formed a union and insisted their faces were blurred out in the close-up scenes.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I totally don't blame them.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the animals were probably upset that Bo Derek didn't show her boobs.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They were all there for the same reason.
Well, and that's probably why they created the union.
I mean, even a paid actor actually in the movie, it didn't say which character they portrayed, said it has poor screenplay, bad acting, unintentional humor, lacks action and charm. I could literally feel the shame radiating from the chimpanzees on set. I got the feeling they'd have preferred to have been imprisoned in a laboratory, being forced to smoke 200 cigarettes a day for cancer research.
Now, do we know who played Tarzan in the movie? Did we even bother looking that up?
I did, but I've forgotten if that counts.
Yeah. So,
I do know that he went on, after this terrible movie, he went on to appear in a kind of parody movie of Conan the Barbarian, and it was a kind of parody of it, but it got kind of a little bit successful, and he was the lead role in that. That's the only thing I can tell you about him.
I wonder if he's the one that made that comment.
I know.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
He's probably the guy that played Edward in the Twilight movies. What was his name? Edward.
Edward? You mean Robert Pattinson?
Yeah.
He's a decent actor. I've seen him in some really good movies.
Well, that's why British people aren't allowed to talk about movies.
No, he's actually a good actor. It's just a crap set of movies.
Well, yes. That is true.
So, on the subject of British, I'm going to leave this movie with a quote from a British film critic. It said, "It's been widely agreed by anthropologists that if Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan book had any basis in reality, Tarzan would have almost certainly have experimented sexually with apes during puberty. Had they decided to dedicate a full 20 minutes to this in the movie in graphic detail, it would still have been less offensive than the acting."
Probably so.
Yeah. So
this is one of those movies where you basically convinced me not to watch it.
Well, I don't know. I think we should. I think we should watch all of these movies.
Well, yeah, but you also said Bo Derek doesn't show her boobs,
Right,
so why should I watch this?
Yeah. The next movie in this series of worst movies in the 80s is also another Bo Derek movie, and just like the Tarzan movie, it was directed by her husband, John.
Well, so I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
I thought Bo Derek was this queen of the 80s.
She was a crap actress, though.
Yeah, but how did she create all these bad movies in the 80s?
Because people knew that people would pay for a chance to see her boobies.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
Remember,
no, I get that.
Boobies sell, especially back in the 80s when you had little chance to see anything remotely like a cleavage anywhere.
That's true. That's true.
So this was the first movie to ever receive an F on Cinema Score, which is like one of the most famous grading things for movies ever.
Gotcha. So this is long before Rotten Tomatoes ever came out. This is how they were grading movies.
Now, obviously, if it's up to date, The Last Jedi has got to be the second F to be received.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, this was the first movie to ever receive an F. And it's partly famous for an actual movie reviewer from Rolling Stone filing a lawsuit for emotional distress and depression after being forced to go to the premiere by his employees.
Wow. And the name of the movie?
Is Bolero.
Bolero.
Yeah.
Once again, never heard of this movie.
I've heard of it, again, just because she was in it, and I think I did rent it out on VHS, just on the off chance of seeing her personality.
Sure.
Didn't see her personality.
Right. No, and that makes total sense.
Yeah. This Rolling Stone guy who filed the lawsuit said, actually, in his case, he stated that he had a better time in Vietnam when he was captured by the Viet Cong and tortured for 2 months.
Was that John McCain?
No.
Oh, John McCain should have been a movie reviewer, movie critic.
Why?
Well, I mean, you were sitting there in this Vietnamese prison or wherever he was after he was born in Panama. He should have just reviewed movies rather than getting in the Senate and having a failed bid for president.
Yeah, I would have rather he'd done that also.
I mean, follow my logic, right? I mean, that makes much more sense. John
Seems
McCain...
more like buyer's remorse than logic. But
yeah, John McCain would have made a really good movie critic.
I wouldn't listen to him.
Well, yeah, but...
especially now he's dead. But I mean, when he was alive, I wouldn't have listened to him.
Yeah, but he could have taken Sarah Palin to the movies with him.
No, he doesn't get to take my girl Sarah Palin to the movies.
Oh, okay. I wonder if Sarah Palin would be a good movie critic.
Yes.
Probably so.
Yeah.
She would shoot her gun at the movie screen.
Yeah.
She didn't,
yeah.
If she didn't like the movie, she would just shoot her gun at the movie screen.
So
what about Tulsi Gabbard, though?
What about
Tulsi Gabbard would be the ultimate movie critic.
Yeah.
I'd like to take her to the movies.
I'd watch it with the sound off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch the movie if I was with Tulsi Gabbard trying to watch a movie and critique it.
I would watch her boil water for 30 minutes on a cooking show.
Yes.
Yeah, even if she was wearing a full apron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She should actually start a YouTube channel of just boiling water. Yeah, we digress.
Back to Bolero. Apparently, as suspected, initial box office receipts were temporarily enthusiastic, based purely upon the once again smashed dream of seeing Bo Derek's nipples.
Maybe we should have called this Bo Derek Fails the Movies. I mean, it seems like there's this Bo Derek thing.
Well, she's only in two out of the 5. Yeah.
God, it feels like she's been in all these.
Now, this next movie you have seen, and I saw it, but I didn't see it until it came on TV, whereas you probably went to the movie theater and paid money for it.
Oh, so we finally are getting to a movie that I might have actually seen.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck. I did see this movie a long time ago. I barely remember the movie. I remember the duck was, an animatronic is not the right word, but puppet isn't either. I mean, it was some kind of costume duck or whatever that was walking around and it was talking and everything. And I like ducks, but ducks are evil.
Yeah.
So, Howard the Duck, I might have to disagree with you a little bit about this being a bad movie.
This is
so you're going to have to guide me through this one.
This is written by people who understand the movies, not people like me and you.
Well, yeah, I don't understand the movie. I mean, there's a talking duck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic to me.
Yeah. Now, it's produced by George Lucas.
Oh, well, George Lucas does no wrong.
Right. But along with him bringing Jar Jar Binks into the world, it's proof that George Lucas must have at least tried meth twice.
Yes.
Yeah, in his career.
So was Jar Jar Binks actually Howard the Duck? Just from a different planet?
On par. Well, actually, no. Howard the Duck did exist because he was like a superhero and he was in comics. Because I remember seeing him in a crossover in some, I think it was a DC comic. And I remember him coming in the scene. It's like, what's a talking duck got to do with anything? And I just came across thinking he was a bit of a wanker. And then this movie came out 10 years later.
Yeah, but talking ducks make everything better.
Well, not this one.
Oh.
It's widely renowned as the worst live-action animation crossover movie ever made, including all of the college-based movies submitted.
What about the new Aladdin?
I haven't seen it.
Oh. No, see,
I downloaded it. I haven't seen it.
That's where I'm going to have to disagree because, Will Smith, he does a good job acting, but Will Smith as the genie is no Robin Williams. So
I'm not a Robin Williams fan. So.
No, Robin Williams is good, and that's the British part of you coming out. But I could see Howard the Duck being better than Will Smith's version of the genie in Aladdin.
Why, was he animated?
No, well, kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
Well, the whole Disney live action, I mean, they keep saying, oh, these are live action movies, but it's CGI. It's better CGI. That's all it is. Right. It's like, oh, live action Lion King. They're not going to the Fort Worth Zoo and saying, hey, let's get the lions to go ahead and act this out. They're not doing that. So it's not really live action. They're just trying to make it look a little bit more realistic, so to speak.
Well, one movie critic said about Howard the Duck's movements that it reminded him of his grandfather, not the early years when he was fun. The part of his life after a stroke paralyzed half of his face and shortly after was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So that's...
Well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah. So the film also set a record in the number of arrests for criminal trespass and vandalism among minors, as teenagers all over the United States defaced Howard the Duck posters outside of movie theaters, replacing the letter D in duck with an F.
Oh.
And we
so creative.
There's no F in duck.
Right. So creative for them to do that.
Yeah. Oh, and one of the highlighted points of the movie, which is still referred to this day, is that included the concept of bestiality to a mainly PG audience.
Yeah, because it was once again, throwing back to the Future, Leah Thompson was in that movie. And so they kind of had this...
She used to be pretty hot.
Yeah, used to be.
In a 80s type way.
Exactly. And so they had this kind of love interest, like you say, and it was a little on the creepy side. Right. But if you were young enough to watch it, you didn't really get it. But if you were an adult, you're like, wait, what's going on here? Yeah. This is kind of messed up. Right. I mean, you're really shaking your head.
Yeah. So... moving on to the next movie, the last movie, which again I think you've probably seen. Okay. Because I've seen it again on TV because I wasn't going to pay for this movie. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, 1987.
Really? A Superman movie made this list?
Yeah.
You're talking about Christopher Reeve's Superman.
Yeah, this was when they paid him one last time 10 times as much money as the movie before, when he had previously said he would not be reappearing in the role.
Wow. And obviously this is before his horse ride.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you'd call it a full ride.
Well,
partial ride.
3/4 of a ride.
Yeah, partial ride. Yeah. Yeah. He did actually turn down, I think, Superman 3, but they paid him a bunch of money to do that. And then he definitely wasn't going to do any more until they then paid him another 10 times as much for this movie.
I think Superman just rode by on that motorcycle.
Sounds pissed.
Yeah.
Apparently in the first Superman movie, 90% of the budget was for the special effects to make it look like he was flying.
Really?
Yeah. In the fourth movie, 80% of the budget went towards Christopher Reeve's wages.
Wow. Well, good for him, because he needed that money after the horse accident.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying he was looking forward into the future, kind of like Back to the Future.
Because even the real Superman couldn't do that.
No.
He does some stupidly insane stuff, but he couldn't do that.
Yeah, he only could spin the Earth backwards to go back in time. He couldn't spin the Earth the other way. Yeah. For some weird reason. Why couldn't he spin the Earth forward?
Because time in the future, what's happened in the future has not happened yet, whereas the past has happened. So you can revisit a timeline that has occurred, but not a future one which has not occurred, because it's still dependent on the decisions you make today. Therefore, the future is not written, the past is.
Yeah, but he goes out in space and spins the Earth backwards, then slows it down, and then spins it back up.
Yeah.
Why couldn't he just spin everything into the future?
I think that was the worst piece of cop-out endings to writing I think I've ever seen in movies. So, oh my goodness, we've put him in this situation it's impossible to get out of. Nah, let's just make him go up there, spin the Earth round, go back in time, and not make the mistake.
So as we talked about before, that was lazy writing.
Yeah, crap.
That was lazy writing.
Yeah, back themselves into a corner.
Right.
So this movie not only has the cheesiest named supervillain of all time, Nuclear Man, it also includes some of the worst special effects since some of the B movies in the 50s, where they had a budget of like $4,000.
Yeah, and by the way, what year was this? 86?
1987.
87.
Yeah, it includes an embarrassingly poor scene where Superman repairs the Great Wall of China using his X-ray vision. Now, this was still before the age of the internet, so generally relied upon people being ignorant as to what X-rays could and couldn't do.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're also talking about 10 years after Star Wars A New Hope came out, which kind of set the bar for special effects.
Yeah.
So there was 10 years they could have studied to say, hey, let's get some good special effects. Well, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah, that's because they didn't have any money left for special effects after paying Christopher Reeve all his money.
Right.
Yeah.
He must have had a fancy wheelchair.
Right. Well, you'd have figured he'd have had a better trained horse.
That's true.
Yeah.
Was he playing polo when that happened?
Water polo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Water polo on a horse?
Yep.
I hope he didn't sue Ralph Lauren.
I've never really liked those after shows. So an associate producer on this Superman 4 Quest of Peace, he was quoted as saying, "This will kill the Superman franchise for 20 years. And indeed, it took another 19 years before the next Superman movie was released.
So he was looking into the future.
Yeah.
He was spinning that Earth around, getting 19 years in the future and saying, Hey, I see where the next one's coming out. Yeah. So the next Superman movie was what?
Superman Returns, and then it was Man of Steel, and then it was Batman against
Superman. So you're talking about more of the modern Superman movies.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's 2019.
Wow, that's crazy to think.
No, hold up. It wasn't 2019 that one came out, was it?
No, I think our math is bad there.
Yeah, let me think. 2008, 2007.
Yeah.
That's when it came out, I think.
Yeah, but still a long way after that.
Yeah. It's nerdy for me to even guess that close, really. So anyway, to add insult to injury, and this allegedly caused many Superman fans to publicly declare they were switching allegiance to Batman, the Quest for Peace movie revealed that the famous Superman villain Lex Luthor named his only son Lenny.
Lenny? That's very lazy.
Pretty poor.
That's pretty lazy. Yeah. I mean, okay, let's think about this for a second. Lex, kind of a powerful name. Yeah. It's like, Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Pretty good name.
Lenny Luthor.
Lenny Luthor is like the guy working at the convenience store. It's like, hey, Lenny, good to see you. I'm here to get a 6-pack of beer.
Yeah.
Not somebody that's trying to take over and rule the world and be what was the whole Superman thing with Lex Luthor, the greatest mastermind of all time, or whatever his tagline was. Lenny, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work.
Now, here's a bit of trivia for you.
Okay.
Can you name an incredibly popular movie which bases two of the main characters upon that Lex and Lenny Luthor?
No.
Austin Powers. Dr. Evil, he named his son Scotty. And so that was based upon the fact that it was such a letdown that Lex Luthor, the supervillain, named his son Lenny. And so Dr. Evil, his big powerful name, named his only son Scotty. Scott.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in those Austin Power movies that is kind of hidden like that.
Yeah.
Well, with all that said, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. We certainly appreciate you listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd podcast. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, thewolfandtheshepherd.com, to your friends and colleagues. And please leave us a positive review on iTunes when you get a chance. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for additional content. Join us next time for another episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd.